Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. Today, I'm dueling with Windups, which is a deck that I've been meaning to mess around with a little for a long time, because I feel like it's a very business casual deck. It has the potential for a lot of competitive play, if you can develop the combos enough and find a playstyle that matches this format. It has a lot of really cool combos and a really wide diversity of strategies, which I enjoy a lot in a deck. And since it still has triple rabbit, triple shark, triple factory, and at least one magician, it's still got moves. So I want to try and do some things with it. Right now I'm not actually commentating the duel because this is a guy who quit to a mirror force partway through the game. So commentating this game isn't really a big deal. It didn't get very far. Anyway, so windups have actually been playing really well for me. I can often get a lot of the combos. I'm trying to find a way to work trap stun into it because sometimes you just get those extremely explosive combos to go off on your opponent with. And of course now I have that pot of dichotomy that I've been working around with. I've never actually used the pot of dichotomy in a recorded duel. I've used it a couple of times in non-recorded duels, and it's actually reset some really good plays for me and ended up winning me the game. So I will be sending my deck profile your way in a little bit. But meanwhile, I've got two more games right after this one that I am going to commentate for you guys so you can just see what windups are looking like in this current format. So while this guy works on quitting in the face of my singular mirror force, I saved that mirror force just for this occasion, so when he attacked me with multiple monsters, I would slam into it and still have plays to make. So my next duel is against Bujins, which is a matchup that I did not expect to do well against, but I ended up winning the game, and I will show you guys how. I can't really attribute it as much to the wind-up deck as I would like, since there are some pretty clear mistakes that my opponent made. So he starts off by adding a bottomless to his hand with Pot of Duality, and setting 4 back row with no monsters. So I bring my wind-up rabbit back, and I decide just to enter the battle phase right there against 4 back row. There's no point in trying to go for the Magician Shark combo if I don't have a trap stun available to me. So I just attack directly and end my turn. So here I have that warning. And during the end phase, I really should have banished the rabbit in order to get Wind-Up Factory's effect. I am still learning how to play the deck, so I have a couple of these misplays. I consider going into Invoker to try and get a bigger play, like with Tiras or something like that, but instead I try to decide to be unoriginal and go into a Zen Mains, which he then warnings. He uses a sword to get back Yamato, which he summons, sets a back row, and ends his turn. During the end phase, I banish Rabbit this time, adding another Shark to my hand in order to continue getting that utility out of my deck, and he mills the Hare. Hare is kind of a problem for me, since the vast majority of my outs to his moves involve destroying, and so, things like Volcasaurus, Adrius, Terrace, they rely on destroying my opponent's monster, and if he's got that much back row, it's going to be difficult to get one of those strategies on the board. So I decided to try and bait it out. One of the things a lot of wind-up players do is they go into a play with Papilloperative and wind-up Rat in order to extend their combos further. But I kind of like protecting my investment in this deck, so if I'm going to run into back row, I'd rather it be once I put a Tiras or a Maestroke on the board. So what just happened there is he hit the bottomless when I summoned Maestroke, so I had to detach a material. I attempted to flip the Yamato face down and attack with the Maestroke, but he mirror forced it. So I banished Rabbit with the in response to the mirror force. In retrospect, it might have been smart for me to banish a Magician instead, since I would have had more plays otherwise. But right now, having a Rabbit is a-okay because I now have Rat, which I'm going to use to attempt to summon that Magician back from the grave. He Fiendish Chains the Rat with, which I am absolutely a-okay with because it allows me to go into Invoker and get that plus off of the Invoker, go for a Wind-Up Shark, and at this point I consider going into Tiras, but I am concerned about the possibility that he has a Crane in his hand, Or is this? No, this is after he does the thing where he adds Mikazuchi to his hand and discards Dark Hole, which in all honesty was the very first one of his big mistakes during this duel. So I decide against going into Tiras for fear of possibly a D prison. I want to try and get rid of that Yamato as quickly as possible. So I use the Volcasaurus to try and destroy the Yamato. He uses the hair. So I go into battle phase. We have a little bit of a dispute as to whether Volcasaurus can attack during the turn he uses effect, but in the end he just mirror forces me and goes for turn. The second big mistake he makes is normal summoning that Mikazuchi. I think he thought he still had the hair in his graveyard, so when I hit the Torrential he did check his graveyard thinking that he could banish hair. So he Book of Moons the rat that I summon the next turn and then ends up quitting the duel because he doesn't have any more plays. So that was a pretty good duel for windups, and I'm going into a game against Blackwings now. My opponent opens with an Ick attack by way of Pot of Duality, and then a Shura with Whirlwind into Bora, and 3 more back row. So I decided to Dark Hole the Shura since I want to be able to put some back row on the board, and if he end phase Ick attacks me, that's kind of an issue. So I don't want him to have any targets for Ick attack to tribute. So I Dark Hole, I hit the tanky button to go into Rabbit since I know he has a ton of back row. Once again, it doesn't make sense for me to try and go into Bear, especially if he doesn't have any monsters for me to pop. And that Bear is going to come in handy later. It's going to be very important to the course of this duel. So he summons the Bora. He uses Black Whirlwind. I MST it. And I gamble with that Mirror Force thinking that he's going to try and hit the Ick attack button. He does, which is great because he forgets that Rabbit will banish itself in response to the Ick attack, so he ends up Fiendish Chaining the Rabbit in order to try and get rid of it, which removes another piece of back row for him. And a simplified game state is great for windups because we have these 2-card combos that just go off on the opponent. So all we need to do to start winning is just to get 2 monsters, or even 1 monster in the case of Rat. But what he needs is more cards, more back row, in order to continue winning the game and get his win condition. So I do get a second factory now, and I use that factory to go into Windup Rabbit, and then I use the double factory to get a Wind-Up Shark and a Wind-Up Magician. Next turn he ends up summoning Dark Armed, and in response to the summon, I banish the Rabbit in order to get those Wind-Up Factory effects. Sorry about the ringing noise in the background. And he destroys those factories, which is A-okay because I just got tons of utility out of them. So I don't really need to worry about getting any more pluses off of those Wind-Up Factories. So during the next turn, I decide to go Magician Shark and try to do the combo that I usually do, which is I go Magician Shark, Shark, and Warrior go into either Tiras or Adrius, and in this case I decide to go into Volcasaurus. Once again, a lot of people go into Rat and then use Papilloperative to reuse the Rat's effect in order to put another Magician on the board. But in this case, I actually would rather have the Rat in my hand as an investment for later, since this deck has turned into less of a crazy combo deck than it was before, and more into a kind of utility style deck, as opposed to those kind of aggro combos. So he did use the Dark Arm to try and banish the Shura, to destroy some stuff with Fiendish Chained. I reset the Magician's effect, and then I attempted to go for another big Magician play, but he used the Torrential Tribute. So he goes into Bora, and I draw another Wind-Up Factory and summon the Rat, which he warnings, which puts me in kind of a nasty position, because now I've got a Maxi. He doesn't have any targets for Blizzard, which means I know that Maxi is dead. So I set the Torrential and end my turn. I continuously hope that he is going to give me a reason to put that Torrential to use or the Maxi to use, but he never ends up doing that. So I decide to normal summon my Wind-Up Shark and get some utility out of that Wind-Up Factory. I have used up most of my deck, but I do still have that Rat left, which I can use to once again go into more combos later in the game. He runs over my Shark, which I'm absolutely A-okay with. I summoned the Rat, I used it to go for Rabbit, but he Maxes. So instead of going for Invoker, I just decided to finish off with the Rabbit, I used the factory to go into another rabbit. So at this point, I've used up most of my main combos, and I'm going into the grind game. I'm looking for that Pot of Duplicity to possibly gain some of my main combos back, but this deck is actually very okay with the grind game, especially with the triple rabbit available to me. And since it does, once again, work that utility really nicely, and I do have those Pot of Duplicities available. So I go for Tanky, which gets me that bear, which, like I said, is really integral to the game right now. Because I normal summon the bear, and he has no response, so I can finally get rid of that Bora. He hits the Mirror Force button, and at this point it's pretty much game. He doesn't really have a whole lot he can do. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, and if you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. And of course, talk about what you guys think about wind-ups, and if you guys want to see a deck profile, possibly from me. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJD0, and I got a jet. See you guys.